Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and this is the Win Play Show, a podcast devoted to all aspects of horse racing and handicapping that is proudly part of the Amalfi Media Network. Today is the day. It is the day that we've gotten Breeders' Cup post positions. The fields are official. They're final. Well, maybe they're not final. We still might have a scratch or two, but for now they're final. And this episode is devoted entirely to previewing the 9, that is right, 9 Breeders' Cup races taking place on Saturday, November 6th. Now listen, before we break it all down, just a quick reminder to follow, download, rate, review the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice. If you want more Breeders' Cup coverage, make sure to also check out our video and episode corresponding blog for the 5 Breeders' Cup juvenile races that are taking place on Friday. You can find that on the podcast platform of the Win Play Show, on our YouTube channel, or on amalfimedia.com. We also have an interview with NBC's Donna Brothers. That's a really great interview that came out on Monday. And then tomorrow, Wednesday, we have an episode devoted to the top 10 Breeders' Cup races since 2000. So we got a lot of stuff for you. Like I said, check out the podcast, check out the YouTube channel, head over to amalfimedia.com, or follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. Finally, make sure to interact with us on social media. Let us know how you think the races are going to break down this weekend and share with your fellow horse racing fanatics on social media. Okay, with not a lot of time to spare, let's dive into the races. And listen, there are 9 races. We're not going to talk about every horse in every race, because if we did, I'd be here for 3 hours. So we're going to go over the fields, because I do want to announce the fields in some ways to make sure everybody knows who's in the race, that sort of thing. You can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the jockeys, the trainers, the odds, etc. If you're listening at home as a podcast, you can hear all of the different names, etc. But I am probably just going to hit on the horses that I either really like or the horses that are maybe our favorites that I'm not as high on. So that's where we'll kind of have our discussions, and then we'll move forward. I'll give you my Win Play Show picks for the entire card. So let's dive into the very first race for that Saturday at Del Mar, where the surf meets the turf at Del Mar. I won't break into song quite yet, but that is the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, post time 3:05 p.m., 7 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up, and obviously 4 fillies and mares, and it's on dirt. And so let's take a look at this field. And this is a small field. It's only a 6-horse field, but you have in the number 1 post position, Proud Emma, trained by Peter Miller and jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Estilo Talanoso, trained by Juan Arrigata and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Edgeway, trained by John Sadler and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Cece, trained by Mike McCarthy and jockeyed by Victor Espinoza. Gamine, trained by Bob Baffert and jockeyed by John Velasquez. And then finally, Bella Sofia, trained by Rudy Rodriguez and jockeyed by Luis Saez. And this is one of those where we're going to be able to save some time on the preview, because this is the easiest, I think, race to pick. Gamine's the winner. And you know this because there's so many scratches from this field. Before we even got to the post position draw, people are really clearly ducking Gamine. This is a horse that won the race last year. Only loss in its career is over a mile. At the sprint distance, it's undefeated. And so she is a dominant horse at that level, going off at 4 to 5 odds. Obviously, the betting line favorite. I would not be surprised if that gets bet down to 3 to 5 or even 2 to 5. Bella Sofia, very nice horse. Very good 3-year-old campaign. Clearly a strong horse, a strong contender, 3 to 1. I think the appropriate second choice. But I would be skeptical of some of those speed numbers coming out of Saratoga. We've seen that in other races this year, where some of the speed figures coming out of Saratoga, when those horses come to other tracks, have started to look a little wonky. So that's something just to keep in mind in general, not just in this race, but it does affect Bella Sofia. And then Cece, at 6 to 1 is the third choice, and I think makes sense as the third choice. And this is a horse that is very classy. has run against some really big competition, has run against Gamine, has run against very good horses, and has beaten the other horses in this field with particular ease. I mean, beat Estilo Talanoso by 3.5 lengths recently. So I think that really the top three favorites is exactly the order you're going to see it. So this is a pretty easy one to pick. I think to win, Gamine, to place, Bella Sofia, to show, Sisi. Listen, stick with me. There's value later on, but the first race is very chalky. So let's move to the next race on the card, which has a post time of 3:40 p.m. Eastern, and that is the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And this is for obviously 3-year-olds and up, and this is five furlongs, so a little bit of a shorter distance. And this is a 12-horse field. So let's take a look at that field for the Turf Sprint. Coming in at post position 1, you have Glass Slippers, trained by Kevin Ryan and jockeyed by Tom Eves. And then Amarati Anna, again, trained by Kevin Ryan and jockeyed by Andrea Otzini. And then you have the morning line favorite, Golden Pal, trained by Wesley Ward and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Lieutenant Dan, trained by Steve Miotti and jockeyed by Giovanni Franco. Arrest Me Red, another Wesley Ward horse, jockeyed by John Velasquez. A Case of You, trained by Adrian McGinnis and jockeyed by Ronan Whelan. Charmaine's Mia, Phil D'Amato horse, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Caravel, a Graham Motion horse, trained by, or I should say, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Then you have another Wesley Ward horse, that's his third in this race, Kamari, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Gear Jockey, trained by George Arnold II and jockeyed by Jose Lezcano. And in the 11 hole, you have Fast Boat, trained by Joe Sharp and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffaleone. And then finally, Extravagant Kid, trained by Brendan Walsh and jockeyed by Ryan Moore. So how do I see the Turf Sprint playing out? Well, I think Golden Pal, this is where you fade the favorite. Right after I just, gave you a very chalky first race, I think this is where you just toss Golden Pal. This is a horse that when it went over to the United Kingdom and ran against the best over there, got absolutely stomped. And I think Golden Pal is a weak morning line favorite. This is a horse I would fade. I don't love how it's performed against the best level of competition, quite frankly. So I think that 5 furlongs, I just don't trust it. So I think that's where you're going to look for other value. Some of those other pieces of value where I would be looking at, Emiratiana going off at 5-1. Absolutely love the post position. If you listen to my juvenile picks and previews, you know that I mentioned that 5 furlong race at Del Mar. You really get into that first turn fast. You actually want to break closer to the inside, which is kind of counterintuitive. A lot of time in sprint races, you like breaking from the outside, but in this case, you really want that inside post position. Amarati Anna breaking from the number 2 hole. I really like that post position, like the speed on this horse. 5-1, I think you're getting pretty nice value there. A Case of You, this is a horse has put up some huge numbers, going off at 8-1. You'd think, hey, that's great value. I just tell you to watch out. It's only ever really put up some of those huge numbers on soft turf. That's always a concern you have with European horses, that you got to look at the turf conditions, because guess what's not going to be soft? The turf at Del Mar, because it's going to be firm, because it's not having a monsoon out there. Unless somebody forgets to turn off the irrigation system overnight, it's going to be firm. So I don't like A Case of You in that regard. Gear Jockey's a good horse with speed, but this would be a pretty significant step up at 5-1. I don't love that value. You're also looking at that far outside post position. Not a big fan of that. Kamari at 6-1. This is a horse that hasn't run on turf since 2020. So again, a little further outside. Don't love the post position there. So those are two that have single digit odds that I don't really love. So that's why I think you can look in some other places. A horse that I do like that does have single digit odds is Lieutenant Dan. This is another horse that it is inside post position. I would be wary that Lieutenant Dan's going to get bet down, because it's a hometown favorite type of horse. It's run out in California. It's run well out there. So I think Lieutenant Dan, though, at 6-1 presents some really nice value, much like Emirati Anna is breaking on the inside. And then I'll give you the horse that I really like underneath, which is Arrest Me Red at 12-1. Run some really strong numbers and has posted some speed figures that are comparable to anybody else in this field. And I think actually likes the firmer turf. So I actually quite like Arrest Me Red at 12-1 underneath. I think it's a horse that really is just constantly improving and showing a lot of class. So how do I see the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint playing out? Well, call me an American homer, but I'm going to go with Lieutenant Dan to win. I'm going to go with Amirati Anna to place. I'm going to go with Arrest Me Red to show underneath. If you want to play Amirati Anna to win, I'm not going to argue with you, because I think if you want to flip those two, if you want to play an exacta box or something like that, I don't blame you one bit. I think the Lieutenant Dan and Amirati Anna, those are your top two, though. I really like those two horses, like the post position, like their capabilities. All right, well, let's move to the third race, which is the Breeders' Cup Big Ass Fans Dirt Mile. That's right, we're going to advertise Big Ass Fans. They are Big Ass Fans. But let's take a look at this field, and that post time is at 4:19 p.m., and this is, of course, a mile on dirt, as the name of the race would suggest. And this is, again, a little bit of a smaller field, 8 horses. Going off of the number 1 post position is Silver State, trained by Steve Asmussen, jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. Then Ping Jiang, trained by Hideki Mori and jockeyed by Yuka Kawada. And then Ginobili, trained by Richard Baltus and jockeyed by Drayden Van Dyke. Jasper Prince, another Hideki Mori horse, trained by Yuichi Fukiyaga. And then you have Life is Good, the Todd Pletcher horse, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Restrained Vengeance, trained by Val Brinkerhoff and jockeyed by Edwin Maldonado. Then you have Snapper Sinclair, always a popular horse, trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then finally, you have 8 Rings, the Bob Baffert horse, jockeyed by Juan Hernandez. So how do I see this race playing out? Well, this is another one where it's going to be a little chalky. And the Breeders' Cup is a little chalky this year. I hate to break that to you. For those of you trying to find value, it's tough. Now, you want to play some pick 4s, pick 5s. There are a lot of races where I think you can single a horse and you can save a lot of money on your tickets on those pick 4s, pick 5s. Those of you who handicap know what I'm talking about and do a lot of betting. For those of you who may be first timers or just casual horse racing fans, don't worry about doing that. Just focus on the win, play, show bets. That's always the kind of the best place to start if you want to have a good time betting on the races. So in terms of the Big Ass Fans Dirt Mile, I think you have a very clear favorite here in Life is Good, going off at 4-5. This is a horse that looked to be primed for the Triple Crown run, but got injured, had a long layoff, switched barns, went from Bob Baffert to Todd Pletcher. This is a dominant horse, though, and I think great post position. And again, there's nothing in its performances coming out of that injury to suggest I have anything to worry about here with Life is Good. I think that's a horse you can single up top in your pick 4s and pick 5s. I think this is a horse that you can bet on to win and feel very comfortable doing it. Now, that said, Ginobili at 4-1, very strong horse, likes Del Mar. So that's always something to keep in mind. But Life is Good has been running all over. So Life is Good is a very versatile horse as well. But Ginobili does like the Del Mar track. And, you know, I just think if Life is Good isn't in this race, I'd like Ginobili to win. But I just think Ginobili's probably going to come up a little bit short in this particular race. A couple of things I'll say. Silver State going off at 7-2. I do not like those odds at all. I don't love the post position necessarily. I think the Met Mile, which it won earlier this year, was not as strong of a field as we thought at the time. Looking back, that Met Mile, yes, is a grade 1 win, but you look at the field and you go, well, who'd Silver State really beat in that race? And so I think there are some question marks there. I was at Parks the day it lost. Oh, that was a frustrating ride to watch. That was a mess. Ricardo Santana Jr. led up with a couple of strides left, and that was just a disaster of a race, and it didn't break well, and it just didn't have a great run there at Parks in general. So I'm kind of out on Silver State, particularly at 7-2. The horse that I would go with is actually 8 Rings, which is breaking at 10-1, breaking from that far outside post position. yes, this is a traditional sprint horse, but we're only going up a furlong. We're going from traditionally 7 furlongs to 8. Um, and had a nice prep. Yes, it was an allowance race. It wasn't a graded stakes race, but moved from kind of sprinting at the graded stakes level to running a route allowance race last time. So it was familiar with 2 turns, won with ease, is familiar with Del Mar. I like 8 rings to come in and give you some value. So how do I see the Big Ass FanDuel Mile breaking down? Well, I have Life is Good to win. I have Ginobili to place. I have 8 rings to show. So let's move to an absolutely packed field, which is the Breeders' Cup Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf. And that is a post time of 4:59 p.m. And this is a mile and a 16th for fillies and mares on the turf, obviously, as the name would suggest. I'm sorry, a mile and 3/8, not a mile and a 16th. And let's take a look at this field. We have a 12-horse field here. In the number 1 post position, you have Going to Vegas, trained by Richard Baltas and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Then you have Pocket Square, trained by Chad Brown, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Acanella, trained by Gare Leon and jockeyed by Colin Keane. Rogier, a French horse, trained by Cedric Rossi and jockeyed by Maxi Guillen. And then you have Queen Supreme, trained by Andrew Balding and jockeyed by James Doyle. Then you have the Aidan O'Brien horse Love, who will be jockeyed by Ryan Moore. Warlike Goddess, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by Julian Leperoux. Love's Only You, Japanese horse, trained by Yoshiti Yagagi and jockeyed by Yuga Kawada. My Sister Nat, Chad Brown horse, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. And then you have Ocean Road, trained by Hugo Palmer and jockeyed by Ocean Murphy. Dog Tag, the Richard Mandela horse, jockeyed by Flavion Pratt. And Audaria, trained by Jay Fanshawe and jockeyed by William Buick. And so how do I see this race playing out? Well, there's a lot of things to say here, but I'm going to try to keep it concise. I actually don't love the 2 Chad Brown horses on this. I know a lot of times a cheat code is typically you look at a turf race, you see Chad Brown, you bet the horses. Pocket Square, My Sister Nat, both at 15-1. There's a reason they're at 15-1. They haven't run well when they've stepped up to this pace and this level. So I think you can safely leave them off your card. Rogier going off at 6-1, cut that horse. Unless a monsoon hits Southern California, this is a horse that absolutely loves running on wet surface. You're not going to get that, like soft and yielding turf, and that's just not the way the race is going to set up at Del Mar, so I'm very skeptical of that. So let's talk about the horses that I really do like here, and it's not purely chalk, but it is, the favorites, I think there's some tiered essence to this field, that there's kind of a top tier, a middle tier, and a lower tier. I think the board is going to come out of that top tier. How you want to configure that maybe is up to you. But we'll start with Warlike Goddess. And this is a horse that has done everything right, has run races that have had a fast pace. And so I think is a very versatile horse in that regard. Just, again, really like Warlike Goddess quite a bit, the Bill Mott horse, and has shown a lot of class the last several times out. Love going off at 4-1. This is a horse that has not really fired this year. They had an incredible 2020 campaign, has come back and has not necessarily been as dominant this year. Won a race, but has finished 3rd and 4th behind some other horses. Granted, some very good horses, and Adiyar and Mishrif. So has finished behind excellent horses overseas. What's interesting is Love actually is one of these European horses that really likes firm turf. So the fact that the turf is firm at Del Mar, actually I think plays into Love's hands. I think you're getting a little bit of value there. I'll be interested to see where this goes. The other horse that is European that I think would do better over here than over in Europe is Audiara, going off at 5-2 from that outside post position. Now, the outside post I'm not thrilled about, but in a distance race, I'm not quite as worried about it, especially the way turf races tend to be run. So I do like Audiara there, but at 5-2, I don't necessarily love the value. But again, if you look, when this horse runs on good or firm surfaces, good things happen. When it runs on soft and yielding, it usually struggles, finishes a little bit behind. So I think this is a horse that actually will like the American Turf and has liked the American Turf in the past. So how do I see the Breeders' Cup Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf breaking out? Well, I have Warlike Goddess to win, I have Love to place, and I have Audiara to show. And that's the way I see it. I do think the top three is where you're going to see it. Warlike Goddess at 7-2 is giving you a little bit of value. Love at 4-1 is giving you a little bit of value. So that's where I would go in the Filly and Mare Turf. All right, let's hit the halfway point and let's get to the Qatar Racing Sprint Breeders' Cup race. And this is a 9-horse field, 6 furlongs on the dirt. And let's take a look at this field. Breaking from the number 1 post position, Following C, trained by Todd Pletcher, jockeyed by John Velasquez. Jackie's Warrior, trained by Steve Asmussen, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then you have CZ Rocket, trained by Peter Miller and jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Matera Sky, trained by Hideki Mori and jockeyed by Yuga Kawada. Aloha West, trained by Wayne Catalano and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Forenzi Fire, trained by Kelly Breen and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. Lexingtonian, trained by Jack Sisterton and jockeyed by Jose Lezcano. Special Reserve, the Mike Maker horse, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. And then finally, Dr. Shivel. Also, there are a lot of debates over how to pronounce this horse's name. Shivel, Shivel. Call it whatever you like. It's Mark Glatt's horse, and it's going to be jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. So how do I see the Qatar Racing Sprint breaking out? Well, this is one where I think, again, there's a clear class in this field. That's Jackie's Warrior. I think, again, if you're playing pick 4s, pick 5s, singling Jackie's Warrior, perfectly good to do. And so absolutely love this horse. And has just looked incredibly impressive in all of its preps. And it's just been putting away people with ease. I have no reason to doubt that Jackie's Warrior is going to be able to do it again. Underneath that, I think you can find a little bit of value. Because I'm not as sold on Dr. Shivel. I'm always going to say, I need Mark Glatt to tell me how to pronounce this horse's name because everybody pronounces it differently. It's funny. A good horse, but has not run the speed with the rest of the field and has not really shown that upper end speed to run with the rest of the field. So has had a nice 3-year-old campaign or a nice campaign, I should say, out in the West Coast and is familiar with Del Mar, but I'm just a little bit hesitant there to get behind the horse. So the 2 horses that I'm looking at for some value is Special Reserve, very classy horse, has run some really strong speed figures, has won several times out. Again, I like the price 6-1 underneath. I think that's a nice exacta maybe with Jackie's Warrior. And then the other one I like is Aloha West, which is a horse that's going off at 8-1. And I love the value of Aloha West. This is a horse that lost by a neck to Special Reserve last time out. So this is a horse that, yes, it's stepping up in competition, had really been running at that allowance level, not a ton of graded stakes experience. But the fact it went out and ran so well against Special Reserve that last time out, Special Reserve is a horse that's been through a lot of grade 1 races, tells me Aloha West is a live shot in this race. And at 8-1, I love the value there. I'll also say CZ Rocket, 12-1, if you're looking for a double-digit odd horse to hit, I think that's the one to look at in this particular field. So if you want to play CZ to show, to hit the board in some of your exotics, I'd understand that. I think there's good value there. This is a very experienced horse at the sprint level. So how do I see the Qatar Racing Sprint breaking out? Well, I have Jackie's Warrior to win, I have Special Reserve to place, and I have Aloha West to show. All right, let's move on to the Breeders' Cup FanDuel Mile. And this is a pretty exciting race. This is another pretty good, significant field, 14-horse field. And so this is breaking in the number 1 position. You have Master of Seas, trained by Charles Appleby, jockeyed by James Doyle. Smooth Like Straight, trained by Mike McCarthy and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Space Blues, trained by Charles Appleby and jockeyed by William Buick. Raging Bull, Chad Brown trained and Irad Ortiz jockeyed. Vindigarde, trained by Hideki Fujiwara and jockeyed by Yushi Fukinaga. And then Mo Forza, trained by Pete Miller and jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. In Love, Paulo Lobo's horse, jockeyed by Alex Achard. Hit the Road, trained by Dan Blacker and jockeyed by John Velasquez. Mother Earth, trained by Aiden O'Brien, jockeyed by Ryan Moore. In the 10 hole, you have Blowout, another Chad Brown horse, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. In the 11th hole, you have Got Stormy, trained by Mark Cassie and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. And then Pearls Galore, trained by Patty Tommy and jockeyed by Billy Lee. And then Casa Creed, Bill Mott horse, jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. And then finally, Ivar, trained by Paolo Lobo and jockeyed by Joe Talamo. So let's talk about the FanDuel Mile. And this is where I think we can find a little bit of value. So I'll first address Mo Forza, going off at 4-1. Very good horse, and just keeps hanging on by a thread. I mean, keeps beating kind of the same horses, Smooth Like Straight, and some other horses every single time out. Doing it at the grade 2 level. That's an important distinction to make. Has had a little bit of a mixed bag when stepping up to a grade 1 competition. So I do have some question marks about Mo Forza in this regard. In Love is a horse that has run well recently in some good races, but has mixed competition or has mixed record at this level of competition. At 8-1, I don't hate the value, but I look to other horses for some potential value play in this case. Now, here's what's interesting is you have a horse like Space Blues. And this is a horse that is more of a sprint horse overseas. And so distance might be an issue. That said, this horse was putting up huge speed figures overseas, which uses a different, they don't use Beyer speed numbers over there, the US time form numbers. And so it's been putting up huge numbers over there, running better and better every time out, but doing it at 7 furlongs. So now we're stepping up an additional furlong. I don't think that'll be a problem, but if you go back and look, Space Blues has only run a mile or longer 3 times, has only won once out of those 3. Hit the board another time, finished 4th a third time. So, and was doing it at a lower level. So that's a concern. And Space Blues, especially going off at 3-1. I don't necessarily love that. Here's the thing though. However you feel about Space Blues going off at 3-1, Pearls Galore is going off at 12-1. Well, Pearls Galore was right there with Space Blues the last time out. So you're telling me Pearls Galore is 4 times worse than Space Blues? You know, going off at 12-1? I don't like that. I like the odds for Pearls Galore quite a bit. And then Smooth Like Straight, that's another horse. You know, Mo Forza is going off at 4-1. Smooth Like Straight's going off at 10-1. Mo Forza is going off at 5-1, I should say. But, you know, Smooth Like Straight's been right there, a nose and neck behind. 10-1 seems like a pretty big jump for a horse that could very easily be right there and pass by Mo Forza. So I think there's some value there in the race. Ultimately, though, where I'm looking, and this might be a little bit of an upset, I'm looking at Blowout at 8-1. I absolutely love this horse. Had an amazing run at Keeneland. This is a horse that gets on the lead and goes. Now, that usually is questionable on turf. I know that's more of a dirt racing strategy, but on turf, this horse can do it. This horse did it against some great competition at Keeneland in a grade 1 last time out and really showed a lot of class. I think this horse, and the other thing is, this is a horse that always hits the board. Usually wins, has grade 1 wins, has multiple grade 1 wins. And even when it doesn't win, it goes second or third. So this is a horse that at 8-1, I absolutely love the value there. And that's where I'm going to chase a little bit of value. So ultimately, how do I have the Breeders' Cup FanDuel Mile playing out? I have Blowout to win. I have Space Blues to place. And then little bit of an upset. I'm going to go against Mo Forza here. I'm going to have Pearls Galore to come in to show. I think, again, you can get some value there at 12-1. I think that's a horse that's right there with Space Blues. And I think there's some quality there in terms of Pearls Galore. All right. Well, let's move to the Longines. I always say Longines because I used to intentionally mispronounce it to make fun of it. And then I started mispronouncing it incorrectly for so long that it became a habit. But people online have told me, you don't know how to pronounce Longines, therefore you must not know how to pick horses, as if pronouncing the name of a French company somehow determines whether or not I know horse racing. But nonetheless, we move to the Longines Distaff. So I pronounced it properly so you can trust my picks. So let's take a look at the field for the Longines Distaff, which is 1 1/8 on dirt for 3-year-old and up for the fillies and mares. And breaking from that, number 1 post position is Private Mission, Bob Baffert horse, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Royal Flag, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Malafat, really nice horse, trained by Todd Pletchard and jockeyed by John Velasquez. Then Blue Stripe, trained by Marcello Polanco and jockeyed by Frankie Dettori. Clairiere, trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. Latruska, the horse of horses, trained by Fausto Gutierrez and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Horologist, Bill Motthorst, jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. She Dares the Devil, trained by Brad Cox, jockeyed by Florent Giroux. As Time Goes By, trained by Bob Baffert, jockeyed by Louis Saez. And then Marche Lorraine, a Japanese horse, trained by Yoshito Yahagi and jockeyed by Ocean Murphy. And then finally Dunbar Road, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. So let's talk about this field. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I'm going to say a couple things. 1, everybody's losing their mind over Latruska's last workout. That she locked up with Brandon's My Lawyer, who's not a bad 2-year-old, who actually ended up not running in any of the Breeders' Cup, but it was out there. And Brandon's My Lawyer, quote unquote, outperformed her. The plan was for Latruska to go 4 furlongs, ended up going 5 furlongs. Some people claim they saw a misstep the last couple of strides out by Latruska. I don't know. Fausto Gutierrez even said he wasn't thrilled with the workout, but it wasn't a big deal. You know, she's not been on the Del Mar surface before. A lot of people are making a big deal about that. Here's what I'll say. This is a horse that's won everywhere it's gone this year. I mean, except once. But, this is a horse that just keeps winning right now. Has won repeatedly the same way. Gets to the lead and dares other horses to run with her. I just love the horse. I've been doubling down on Latruska all year long. And I'm not going to stop now. I think this is the horse. And I think she is the horse of the year. That's my opinion. I think maybe if Essential Quality wins the Classic, then he's got a claim. But otherwise, I think Latruska is the horse of the year. I absolutely love everything she does. She does things the right way. I would not get nearly as worked up over those workouts as other people might. I think it's being overblown quite a bit, and understandably so. This is the first time a lot of us are seeing some of these workouts are being dissected. I get it. But Latruska is the horse, and I think this is another one you can feel confident singling up top. Malafat, very classy. In my opinion, this is the only threat to Latruska. I think Malafat's a very, very good horse, has had a very wonderful campaign. And some people have even contemplated running against the boys. I don't think quite that class, but certainly a very strong horse. I'll tell you, I've seen some people talk about Clairiere because she won the Cotillion last time out. Stay away from Clairiere. I'm telling you right now, 10-1. I know that sounds like pretty good value. That Cotillion, I think, might be tainted. Obligatory looked terrible the next time out. And Always Karina has just been a hot mess since the beginning of that race. So who Clairiere beat in the Cotillion is now really kind of being questioned, in my opinion. So I don't love Clairiere in this spot. I think this is a horse that is very consistent, and she's run up against Malafat a lot and been right there with Malafat on a lot of races. But I think if you're choosing to think that she's going to get past Malafat and Latruska because of how she performed at the Cotillion, I would think again on that. Because I think that Cotillion field is, I don't know, I'd downgrade that a little bit based upon how some of those other horses have performed since that race. She Dares the Devil, 4-1. I don't love that price. The last 2 efforts have been against okay competition, but not great competition. Has run some big numbers, but again, I just don't like some of the recent runs there. I actually think where you might find a little bit of value is on the inside with Private Mission and Royal Flag. I think those good post positions 1 and 2. Royal Flag in particular, I'm going to be interested to see how that fluctuates from morning line to post time. But Royal Flag is a horse I like quite a bit. Filly and mare I like quite a bit in this race. But I think Private Mission's right there too. I think you could play either of those underneath in a show bet or kind of underneath in a exotic and a trifecta. They're both 8-1. I lean more towards Royal Flag. I like that number 2 post position, maybe a little bit more than the number 1 post position, but that's just kind of the way I see those two breaking out. But I think very even. I think they both offer really nice value underneath in this particular race. So ultimately, how do I see the Distaff breaking out? I've been on her all year, folks. I've been telling you about it all year. I'm not going to break from it now. Latruska to win, Malathat to place, Royal Flag to show. All right, let's move to the Breeders' Cup. Longines Turf, post time 7:40. And so let's take a look at this field. That's 1.25 miles on turf. And it's a 14-horse field with Rock Emperor leading off with Chad Brown and jockeyed by Javier Castellano, United with Richard Mandela and John Velasquez. Domestic Spending with Chad Brown and Flavian Pratt. Astronaut, trained by John Sheriff, jockeyed by Victor Espinoza. Tribhuvan ended up getting in. Chad Brown horse, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Acclimate, trained by Phil D'Amato and jockeyed by Ricardo Gonzalez. Walton Street, Charles Appleby horse, jockeyed by James Jack Doyle. Broom, trained by Aidan O'Brien and jockeyed by Frankie Dettori. Sisfahan, trained by Hank Gruey and jockeyed by Christian DeMoro. Ebir, the Charles Appleby horse, jockeyed by William Buick. Gufo, trained by Christoph Clement and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Tiona, Roger Varian and David Egan, jockeyed. And then Tarnawa, Dermot Weld's horse, jockeyed by Colin Keane. And finally, Japan, not from Japan, just the horse Japan, the Aidan O'Brien horse, jockeyed by Ryan Moore. So here's the thing about this race. The favorite, Tarnawa, I absolutely love. I love this horse. I absolutely hate, capital H, capital A, capital T, capital E, hate the draw. This is clearly the best horse in the field. If you I think that's just the case. But I don't like that 13 post. And I think that could end up costing Tarnawa the race. So I'm looking somewhere else in this particular race. And where I'm ultimately ended up looking is Domestic Spending, going off at 4-1. This is a horse I really like. This is a horse that can pass a ton of horses. Distance is a question mark. So that's a concern potentially. Distance is something to consider. But this is a horse that can run. This is a horse that can just pay. This is a horse that goes from 9th to 1st like that. And so that's what you want to see in turf horses, that capability of passing horses down the stretch because they're going to be grouped up. Usually you're going to have somebody trying to run away from the field, and then they're all going to fall back. So I really like Domestic Spending at 4-1. You're getting a little bit of value there to win. Underneath, let me talk about a couple of horses real quick. Rock Emperor at 15-1. Honestly, I would throw some money on that horse. I don't have it on the board for my win place show, but I don't hate it. And I don't love that inside rail, but at 15-1, that's a good horse. And I'd throw a couple bucks on Rock Emperor in that case to certainly hit the board. And make sure if you're playing a couple different exotics, throw Rock Emperor in there because I really do like that horse. But underneath, the two horses I'm looking at are Gufo and Walton Way, both going off at 8-1. Again, giving you a little bit of value. Gufo, it can do the distance. That's not an issue at all. This is actually a slight cutback in distance. So we'll do just fine with that. Just a really good horse and has won a bunch of nice races this summer. It didn't look great last time out, but like I said, I think the cutback in distance will actually be good. I've been running at 1.5 miles for quite a while. And so I think Gufo, like I said, is quite a good horse in this field. Has that same capability of passing horses down the stretch. Christoph Clement's a really good trainer, very good on turf. He's had a really nice summer and fall. So that's a barn that's peaking at the right time. So I like Gufo quite a bit there. And then Walton Street, that's another one I like a lot. That's a horse that just keeps getting faster. Every time out, keeps getting better, keeps putting up better performances. I love the position. And this is a horse that has not always won, but you talk about going up against good competition. Lost to Quater Tasso, Turquator Tasso, for those of you who don't know, won the Arc. A great horse. Lost to Mischief, a great horse. So this is a horse that has lost to some really phenomenal horses that are out there. And I think if you're looking to fade Tarnawa because of that post position, Walton Street makes all the sense in the world to play underneath. So how do I have the Longines Turf playing out? I have it domestic spending to win, Walton Street to place, Gufo to show. All right, well, we made it to the final race. Let's talk about the Breeders' Cup Longines Classic, a mile and a quarter on dirt, and these are the 9 that we've all been waiting for all night long. Post position 1, Tripoli, trained by John Sadler, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Then you have Express Train, trained by John Sheriffs, jockeyed by Victor Espinoza. Then you have quite the lineup in the 3-4-5 slot. Hot Rod Charlie, trained by Doug O'Neill, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Essential Quality, the Brad Cox horse, jockeyed by Louis Saez. Then you got Brad's other horse, Nick's Go, in the 5-hole, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. In the 6th hole, you have Art Collector, the Bill Mott horse, jockeyed by Mike Smith. Stiletto Boy, trained by Ed Mosier Jr. and jockeyed by Kent DeSormo. And then you have Bob Baffert's horse, Medina Spirit, with a great post position there in number 8, jockeyed by John Velasquez. And finally, you have Steve Asmussen's horse, Max Player, jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. So let's talk about the field. And I have played this race out in my mind for the last few weeks. I think most of us know exactly how the first mile is going to go. Nick's Go is going to go to the lead, and that's that. Nick's Go is going to run as fast as Nick's Go can run. And everybody else is going to be back. This is going to look a lot more like a turf race where sometimes horses can get out 4, 5, 6 lengths ahead of everybody else. I think that's what's going to happen. I think the question is, how are the rest of the horses going to bunch up? How's Essential Quality going to look? Essential Quality is breaking from that 4 position. That's not a bad spot for Essential Quality, but Essential Quality likes to be outside. It doesn't need to be on the rail. Essential Quality runs way more than it needs to run a lot of times in terms of distance. Likes to be on the outside though. And from that 4 position, I don't anticipate it'll be an issue in terms of being boxed in or anything like that. I think Essential Quality will be fine. Medina's getting a good break from breaking that outside post position. We'll probably be able to sit down in that kind of 2nd, 3rd position because nobody's going to go with Nick's Go. And I don't have a lot of faith in Medina being able to keep up this pace though. And I'm fading Medina for that reason. I think Nick's Go is going to set in a crazy, crazy pace. And in my opinion, there are only 2 horses that can run with Nick's Go. And that's Essential Quality and Hot Rod Charlie. I think those are the only 2 that can do it. I think if you're looking for just a Hail Mary, maybe Max Player, but I think this race actually sets up terribly for Max Player because Max Player likes to be now in that stalking position. That's a horse that had been running from really far back and not having a ton of success, has moved into more of a stalking position. It's not going to be able to do that here. You're not stalking Nick's Go. If you do, that's a huge mistake. You're going to get burnt out. So Max Player, I don't love. Maybe Express Train has good speed. Maybe sits from the outside 2-hole, gets a good trip, can make a run at the end. But ultimately, I think this is a 3-horse race. Essential Quality, Nick's Go, Hot Rod Charlie. I think Nick's Go runs as fast as it can, but here's the thing. Essential Quality always has enough. Always has enough. This is a horse that does not win blowing people away. You're never going to see a Secretariat type performance from Essential Quality. This is a horse that simply keeps running, just keeps going. This is a horse that has had phenomenal workouts. This horse always seems to have enough. Distance won't be an issue. If this horse can run behind a hot pace that Nick's Go can set. So the way I see the Longines Classic breaking down, I got it. Essential Quality to win. I think he edges out Nick's Go at the very end, and I have Hot Rod Charlie to show. That's a pretty chalky finish, I know. It's going to be an amazing race, though. I can't wait to watch it. And I know you all are excited about it as well. But I have Essential Quality on top. I think that horse just has too much. And listen, that horse lost one time at the Kentucky Derby and had a terrible trip. It's not going to get a bad trip this time out. I trust Luis Saez, and this is a horse that just has answered the bell every time out, at every distance, at every track. And I love Essential Quality for that reason. So that's why I have Essential Quality to win the Classic. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for sticking with me through all of this. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you want more, check out my preview of Friday's Breeders' Cup Juvenile races, as well as my interview with NBC's Donna Brothers and the top 10 Breeders' Cup races since 2000. If you have, we have all that you need to have you covered for all of the Breeders' Cup coverage this Breeders' Cup week. Finally, just a reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice, and subscribe to the Win Play Show on YouTube, in addition to following me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. And check out AmalfiMedia.com for all of my picks and written up analysis for each of the Breeders' Cup races. Until next time, friends, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a wonderful and safe Breeders' Cup weekend and a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you that it's now post time.